turning perhaps to some more distant history, in your doctoral dissertation, you write that the change in nomenclature from Judea to Palestina during Roman times is foundational to contemporary campaigns to delegitimize Palestine and the idea of Palestine. And you, in fact, you quote a Zionist leader, Malcolm Hoenlein, as stating, I thought a little humorously, that the BDS movement, in fact, began 2,000 years ago with the Roman Emperor Hadrian during the 2nd century, when he supposedly changed this administrative nomenclature. So why is this considered such an important development? And what did your own research lead you to conclude about this episode?
So I would say that it's considered an important development because if you're a nationalist and you're a Zionist, then history is relevant to the extent that it confirms your nation's righteousness, right? And so the entire Zionist ideology and mythology is built on this idea that Jews have faced millennia of uninterrupted persecution. That's the argument. I mean, that literally is like, hey, Palestinians, sorry about these inconveniences, sorry about the occupation and the siege and the apartheid, but like we were persecuted, so like it's not our fault. And so, what better a historical episode to highlight if you're a Zionist than to highlight and to embrace and also publish academic history papers about than this moment where Jews were ostensibly exiled from the land. Not only were they exiled from the land, but their name was ostensibly erased from the historical record. And not only was it erased, but then it was ostensibly replaced with the word Palestine. So it's this one historical moment where you kind of bundling together all of these little shards of history that when taken together, paint this really perfect story for the Zionist narrative, and almost too good to be true. And so it just struck me as something that I felt like I had read a lot of mythology about, but never really read the history itself. And so I will confess, by the way, I am not a Roman historian. I do not read Latin or Greek, but it doesn't take long to discover that this story is really built on very shaky foundations. Okay, so
the story being that the Romans not only changed the name of this territory from Judea to Palestina, but that they did so with the specific purpose of eradicating the Israelite connection to the land.
Exactly. So maybe I can narrate from the point of view of the Zionist mythologists. Maybe I can first narrate how they would tell that story and then highlight some of the problems with it. And so it's 130 CE. The Romans banned circumcision. Jews circumcised their newborns. They Hellenize Jerusalem, and they levy a tax on Jews. And so a Roman rule is repressive, and which inspires rebellion. And so you get this guy Bar Kokhba, who's revered by Jews and celebrated. And so he revolts against the Romans, and he takes control of Judea, although not Jerusalem, in 132. And he annihilates Roman troops stationed in Judea. And basically, he rules Judea for about 2 years. And this was quite upsetting to Hadrian, who's the emperor of the who's Roman emperor. And Hadrian absolutely crushes the revolt with gruesome cruelty. Some of the anecdotes you read in the sources is that he was brutal and cruel. And he crushes the revolt in 135. And so after 135, you start to see inscriptions, Roman inscriptions, refer to that territory as Syria Palestina, which translates to Palestinian Syria. So instead of calling it Judea, it's called Palestinian Syria. So I think the first point I would make to the propagandists is that even the way the story is narrated, that Palestine replaces Judea, is actually false. It was Palestinian Syria as a term. It replaces Judea. So that's just getting the facts straight, okay? And then there's the question of like, the argument that the Zionists are making is they're identifying Hadrian's motives. They're ascribing intention. We don't even have any direct evidence that Hadrian like explicitly changed the name. Right. What we have is that inscriptions start to refer to the place as Palestinian Syria rather than Judea. But the question is like, why do they do that? Was it Hadrian who changed the name, or did people just start calling it that? And that's how the name changed? We don't even know that. It's just speculation. So let's concede the point that Hadrian changed the name. Why did Hadrian change the name? Well, Hadrian also had an interest and a love for Greek culture. And he changed, by the way, lots of other cities. He changed lots of other names in the empire from their name to their earlier Greek names, because he had this fondness for Greek culture. So that was the case with Antigonia, which he changed to Mantinia. That was the case with Jerusalem, which he changed to Ilia Capitolina. So there were lots of names that were changed by Hadrian.
Outside this territory as well.
Exactly. Other parts of the Roman Empire.
Right.
And so that's one possibility. I think there's also another possibility, which is that I sort of hinted to this already, but that there simply was no official renaming at all, that there wasn't a clean break, that instead one name fell out of use because the Judean state was no longer, and that a new name, Palestinian Syria, it came to prominence. And there's actually reason to believe that that is what happened, because not only do we not have any direct evidence that Hadrian explicitly erased this name, but we also see that both of those names, Judea and Palestine, or Palestinian Syria, they both appear in sources before 135 CE and after 135 CE. So there's reason to believe, just looking at the documentary evidence and the inscriptions, that that both of these names persisted before and after the ostensible name change.
So you're making the case for kind of dynamic evolution versus administrative fiat.
Exactly right. And again, we're all speculating here. None of us know exactly what happened, and we never will know what happened because we just don't have that much direct evidence attesting to one thing or the other. But what we can say for certain is that this idea that Hadrian vengefully, in spite of the Jews, erased Judea from history, replacing it with Palestine, that is mere speculation. And it's used and exploited today by Zionists to paint this story and this narrative that Zionists have faced uninterrupted millennia of persecution.